Alright, how's it going, guys? Paul from Model Rides here, and a lot of people have been asking for a little tutorial about taking apart a motor safely. This motor in particular was already taken apart by the customer to put a new rim on and a new tire. That's why we got the street tire there. But I ripped off the hangers already, and it's a little scratched up. I think he forgot to put back one of these spacers. Guys, don't forget to put your parts back the way they came out. Obviously, the spacer goes in first, so you have that little gap so this doesn't happen. So I'm missing one. I'll have to try to dig one up. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to get to the rim part, and I got to take apart all these screws, take the cover plates off. He's getting a new motor. I believe this motor is shorted out for reasons I really don't want to talk about while you're watching this. It's nothing to do with replacing the rim. I just DeWalt, I think it's an 8-volt, not sure, yeah, it's an 8-volt oscillating screwdriver. The thing is great. I think it's about 80 bucks, and I just switch out tips, and once I find this tip, there we go. Alright, so we're going to start by if it's a little snug, I recommend doing it by hand first. So basically I give it a twist. Yeah, he really over tightened these, I could tell, because usually it doesn't take too much to torque these out. I'm kind of skipping. I don't need this to be a 40-minute video. I just want to make this kind of quick to show you how to pop the motor out safely. This is the ugly part. So you're gonna need to, let's see. So I have a couple of beater tiny screwdrivers. They're little beaters. I try to get in there inside the plate, and then I evenly pop off the plate, and once the plate pops up, you expose the motor itself. So I'll show you. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it's really the only way I could get in there and do it. Alright, so once you break the seal, the Sherman has a seal around it, which is nice. It looks like some type of weatherproofing or like gasket type of silicone. So, okay, so this one's coming out. Like I said, this guy changed it already, so it made it a little easier for me. Usually takes a little bit to get these out, but if you do it like this across each other, even pressure, this one I'm pretty sure I could wiggle it out. Oh, keep going with the screwdrivers. This part you need a little bit of patience with. Don't jab the screwdrivers too far in. You will hit the stator, and you don't want to mess up the coils. So just a little. Stay on the rim with this. Pry them up nice and even. Back and forth. Now what you're basically doing is you're trying to pop out the bearing that's hugging the axle. So the bearing sits in right here, and the axle it's tight against. So depending on how snug it is, it will either pop out fairly well, or it'll be a pain in the ass. So alright, so this takes a little time. Now at this point I got pretty good gap here, so to play it a little safer, I could take my tire levers and I could just pop them in here, and I could use those instead. This way I know I'm not damaging any coil wires. Alright. It goes little by little, it just jars up and pops off, so you just got to give it a little bit of time. And what I could do is I leave these in there. I got a couple more that I could pop in there. It does like to fight, so I'm gonna have to just give it some time. Well, go back to the screwdrivers. Alright, so in this case, it's almost out. I can almost just keep wiggling it out. It'll pop up, but it looks like it's actually pulling the motor part out. So this side is still intact, so I'm going to take off these screws. Usually if I get to this point, I have a little trouble getting this cover plate off. I will pop it out on the other side and see if that works better. So, alright, let's flip this over. You just want to be careful, your wires are coming out of your axle, so what I do is I use some of this and I put it right over the axle and I lay the tire down on the roll of tape so I don't mess the axle wires up. Use it as a little spacer. There you go. Alright, so let's get these guys out. I'm sure, yeah. I'm going to go with a wrench. Where's my 5mm? So I believe, yeah, this is, no, that's not going to be it. I think this is a 4mm. I want to say this is a 4. Yeah, so there's a 4mm Allen key you want to use. And I just want to break it because he's got them in pretty tight. And these heads will break. So don't try to really crank these totally down. Definitely use some blue Loctite. But don't over crank these when you're tightening them because the head will. This one's stripped. He must have used an impact gun. I don't recommend fully impacting these all the way down because then you'll just overdo it and crack it. So, yeah, these are pretty good. Alright. So it looks like I'm just having trouble with one that's stripped here. And then I just go and pull them out like this. Save my wrist. I tend to use this screwdriver, this mechanical screwdriver, over it. This is a heavy-duty impact gun. I don't like putting those screws in with an impact gun, just for that reason where you could just crack them, no problem. Trust me, I know from experience. Oh, I'm going to answer this. I'll take 1 second of your time. Well, it's not going so good, so I decided to make a notch in that screw because it's stripped and I can't get it out. So what you do is you make a slot. Hopefully this works without cracking the head. Boy, it's cranked on there, man. I'm afraid I'm going to crack the head right off. And then I'm going to have to extract it, which is a pain in the ass. So I'm going to try this. This flathead's just a little too small. And I don't have my big screwdriver. Alright, I'm going to have to go get my big screwdriver because I don't want to crack this head. It's in a good spot right now. I could probably get it out with a little bit bigger screwdriver, but this one's a little too small. So, alright, couldn't find my screwdriver, but I'm using a worn down chisel, and I think I cracked it a little bit, meaning that I started to get it, and there you go. So, alright, I got lucky. MacGyver or anything. Try it. If it doesn't work, try something else. So now that I cracked it, comes out nice and easy. I'll throw this in the garbage, and I'll use an extra screw. So you got to get creative when you're repairing stuff. Stuff happens. It's not for everybody, but there's my little notch that I made, and it weakens up the head. So I was really afraid I was just gonna crack one side off, and then I'd have to tap it and extract it, and that's always a pain in the neck. So glad that worked. There's a little pro tip for you. If you have a Dremel, you make a couple slots on each side and use a regular slotted screwdriver, and that worked. So there you go, a tip on top of a tip. Garbage. Alright, so now we're back to square one. Oh, I got one more screw. Hold on. This one I don't think is stripped, so this one. Yeah, it is. Alright. Now that I got all the screws out, we start over with our little beater screwdrivers. And like I said, you just want to break the bead. Once you break the bead, it should loosen up. You could hear it. See how here's like it sounds like it's hollow. I don't know if you could hear that difference, but that's what you listen for, because now you know that the motor separates from the rim, and you should be able to get in there. This side might pop out, who knows. Okay, this one seemed like it came up better. Let's see. Sometimes it pops up so fast it almost hits me in the face, so you gotta be careful. It's happened a couple times where it just springs off the axle. It'll probably happen while I'm filming. Seem to get stuck in the same spot. It's very strange. There we go. A little more. Alright. There we go. Alright. So, Oh, well, it looks like he put some of his own grease in the bearing and made a little bit of a mess. So it's splattering all over the inside of the cover. It didn't look like it got to the wheel itself. It didn't look like the motor. Got some of that white silicone junk all over the wheel, but the grease is just spilling out of the bearing, so I'm going to clean that up. I mean, there's no reason to over grease a bearing. I mean, everything is sealed inside here. If you guys never seen the inside of these things, I'll just pop one out. So basically you see the amount of dirt on the outside, and once you get the outside rubber seal off, it's fairly clean. I mean, it's still, even though this one took abuse, I think this is a V11 bearing, it's fairly clean inside as opposed to the outside, so there's no real reason to over grease the bearings. Just leave them alone. If they go, they go. They're just gonna go. You're not gonna stop anything and all dirt from getting into this seal. It's eventually gonna just seep in there and you know, and get dirty and ruin, and then you got to change the bearing. So it's gonna happen. Face the facts. We ride these things in all kinds of weather conditions, even though they tell us try not to ride in the rain. Yeah, okay. So clean that up. Alright, we're getting to the fun part. So now that that's all cleaned up, we have our axle exposed. Axle looks okay. And now here's the fun part. Now, some people do this differently. I like to keep it simple. I use a hard piece of wood on the axle. Okay, put that down there. Clear my table off. Tape out of there. Okay, let me see how that looks. Alright, so basically I have one side cover completely off. I have all the screws out of this cover, but she's not popping off. No big deal. So what I'm just gonna do is, I don't know if you guys are aware of this. If you're not aware of it, the motor and the rim have, stand by one second. You'll see in a minute, but I'll just show you ahead of time. Here's the magnets on the rim part, okay? And then, I don't know if you can see that. There you go. Here's the magnets on the motor part. So you basically got magnet against magnet. It's making a pretty good tight fit. So getting these off, you're not just gonna pull these off. You're gonna have to really apply pressure, even pressure, amount of pressure. Watch your fingers, because there you go. All right, so now I basically pressed the motor away from the magnets on the rim. Now here's the tricky part. Don't let go of the tire, because it could snap back and get your finger. So just try to put pressure here. And there you go. Once you pull apart the motor, all right, the potential for catching your finger is gone, so you're safe. You just want to take a look, make sure everything's good on your motor. All right, and that's pretty much it. All right, now once you separate the motor from the rim, you put your motor aside. That's in good shape, and this rim we're going to reuse. So the rim is the main thing that I want to make sure. It was brought to my attention that if you got a new Sherman rim, that I'm going to try to see if I could show you guys, okay? Let's see. Okay, I'm going to take my screwdriver and basically show you here that this side, all right, is bigger than this side. There's more of a gap, all right? So, I believe here, and then I pressed it down here. Motor side. I'm not 100%. I'm gonna have to find out from Jason at E-Wheels. There's a directional way that the rim goes on the motor. So I kind of popped it off too quick. I wasn't sure what side came up first, but I'm thinking that it was this side was up. So I had the small magnet side, sorry, the larger magnet width side on the motor wire side. Alright, so basically you have to be wary of that, because you don't want to put the motor in backwards, because then the motor magnets won't align with the rim magnets, and then you could potentially have a cutout because everything's spinning, making voltage, and you could screw up that way. Alright, so that's pretty much it, guys. That's how you get a motor out of a rim effectively. Goes in the same way. It snaps in. You know, you want to tighten up your, I could say one thing, that when you put your cover plate back on, you want to tighten up your screws opposite sides. Go from one side to the other. Tighten up this side, then this side. And don't fully crank them down yet, because the motor, what happens is when you pop that motor back in, I'm just going to show you real quick. Alright. Here's the other thing. I'm glad I got to this point. When you do put the motor back, right, you're going to get to this point right here, and you're going to go, alright, let me just throw it back in. The magnets are so strong that it's going to grab and pull these two together so forcefully that it could take your tip of your finger off. So what I love to do is I just hold it with the wires and the axle, and once I get to a certain point, there you go. Alright, it's going to slam together like that. If you have your fingers in there, it's not going to hold back. It's going to take your fingers with it. So be very, very, very careful that you don't put your fingers, don't put the motor in like this, you know, holding it like this. Put it in with the axle, clear yourself, and then let it snap together. Alright, so again, I just take even pressure. I get my piece of wood there on my axle so I don't go through my table. Alright, and then I just press down on the outsides of the rim and the tire, and I just pop down one shot. Okay, it's violent, but it's effective. As long as you give even pressure, it should come right up. Alright, and again, try to hold the tire down and clear the motor away from the rim, because it could, like you saw just before, it popped back in. You don't want that snapping back in, and you know your fingers are around the rim. It's gonna do some damage. Alright guys, so basically that's it. Once you do get the motor in, like I said, opposite side tension on those plate screws, get both sides in, and then what happens is you're going to hear a pop, and that's basically the motor separating from the rim, giving it very, very little gap between the motor magnets and the rim magnets, so you don't have that friction. If you tighten them up one side too much, if you completely tighten up one side, you might offset the motor. All right, and then it's not gonna spin, or it's gonna spin, but it's gonna have friction. So you got to make sure that everything is kind of even pressure around these screws. Flip the tire over, even amount of torque on the opposite side plate screws, and then once everything's kind of tight, you'll hear the motor it's going to adjust itself, center itself, and then once all your screws are in, then you can go ahead and torque them down and tighten them down. I like tightening them up with my DeWalt screwdriver until they get firm, and then I just hand tighten them up and crank all the way around opposite sides till everything is completely tight. They do come with blue Loctite on them, so if you want to put some more blue Loctite on them, it would be helpful, and they'll stay in longer than expected. Alright, so that's pretty much my rim swap. I'm going to get my other motor, and I'm going to pop my motor back in there and then tighten everything back up. Alright, so like I said a little while ago, the magnets are offset inside the rim. So without calling e-wheels, I pulled my new motor out, and I kind of see why it's like that. So if you could see right here, you got the motor wires sticking out of your magnets more on this side, on the wire side, than the non-wire side. So that's basically why your magnets are offset. It looks like the coils needed a little bit more depth here, so it's gonna offset everything, unlike a regular motor like a Nikola or a MSX, where it's kind of even here. On the Sherman, these stick out a little bit further than this side here, so you're gonna want the thin side of the gap on your rim to be on the non-wire side. I keep saying that. All right, so that's basically it's an easy, if you stare at it, it's obvious. So no worries there. I know which way it's going to go in now. Now I'm just going to put my plates on. This was a motor from e-wheels, so it's got a bearing issue. Not a bearing issue, but the bearing, when he pulled the plate off, the bearing stayed on the axle. So I'm going to probably leave this bearing in here instead of trying to remove it. It's almost easier taking it off of the plate itself. So I'm going to just remove this bearing and then place the plate right over this bearing that's on the axle already. Alright, so give me a few minutes. I will work on that. Make sure my motor doesn't slide off my table. Alright, so let me show you how that's done. Alright, we're going to get my torch, and we're going to heat up. Some people asked to see how this is done as well. Basically, your aluminum and your steel from your bearing is pressed up pretty tight, and you can't really extract it. You don't really want to hit it here. You know, you don't want to damage anything. The seal, you don't want to hit the seal. So basically, I take heat. I heat this all up. And then what I do use for this particular one, okay, I can't use that. Okay, so what I use is the end of a screwdriver. I pull out my 11-in-1 screwdriver, and I basically just put it in there. It's pretty much plastic with a little bit of a metal liner, but it doesn't really hit the metal. And I just give it a pop. And you can almost, I'm going to try to, maybe it'll come out. Well, it moves a little bit. Let me give it a couple whacks and see what happens, because sometimes it's not really in there that great. And this one happens to be in there. Alright, so I'm going to heat this up, and I'll flip it over, and then I'll bang it out. So we get our heat. And try not to get heat on the seal itself. Just go around the rim, nice and even. Your aluminum's going to get hot right away, so okay, like I said, your aluminum plate is now burning hot, so you want to make sure you got a nice welder's glove. Alright, and let's see if that was enough to pop that. Comes right out. Okay? Alright, there you go. Just got to clean that up. This has got to cool down. This is probably scorching hot. The bearing is stuck to the rim now. Okay, so the bearing is fine. No damage to the bearing. So that's a good Sherman bearing. I'll hold on to that. I'll clean that up. After this cools down, I'll put it on my motor stator, and then I will attach everything. So get yourself a Burnzomatic. It's a plumbing torch. Doesn't take a lot. Just go around a couple times. Don't overdo it. Don't keep the heat in one place. You could mess up your aluminum plate. Always get your gas out of your line. Okay, just in case this thing falls on the floor and cracks, and then you have gas spilling out. Okay. Put that guy over here. Alright, this is my welding gloves that I picked up at Harbor Freights. I think they were like 30 bucks. They were quite expensive, but that's really what you need to touch any of this metal that you heat up with the torch. So, you know, all this stuff you need. So, spend a couple of bucks. If you want to do maintenance yourself, you're going to need to spend the money and do it. I'm going to let this guy cool off, and I will see you in about 10 minutes. Okay, I got my motor plate still warm to the touch. It's like 10 minutes later. It's like, you know, it's like picking up a hot piece of toast right now. But I was able to push it onto my bearing a little bit and get my motor in the right way. And now it's just a matter of even pressure. I like to just pound this down with my hands, so I know it's not going to be breaking any of the aluminum. And I'll just go around like this until it seats okay. There you go. Alright, once it gets close enough, it'll pull in more when you screw it in. Then it should seat completely in. So I'm going to just bang it in a few more times. Put that on there. There you go. Alright. Now I can see my bearing is almost sealed completely. Alright. Good enough. I don't like crushing it, so I can't move the plate around to align with the screws. So I will now get a couple of screws in here just to hold it in place. And then I'll flip it over and do the same on the other side. Okay, just like that. One on this side. And now you guys are actually watching me in, you know, live time. You know, it's taped, but it's live. I'm actually doing this, you know, I'm not skipping through anything. I just let my plate pretty much sit for maybe 10 minutes just to cool off. That's pretty much all I skipped. But for the most part, you guys see me pretty much go through what it takes to change out your rim. Alright, so now I got 4 screws on one side. It's aligned. Like I said, it won't turn because the motor is now pushed to one side until I get the other side going. Again, you don't want to mess up your wires sticking out of your motor axle, so just take this piece of, I use painter's tape because it's got a nice wide opening. And this way I could lay the motor down without the motor sitting all the weight on the wires. Alright, so I could see right here. Let me see if you guys could see. I'll bring it in for a close-up. All right, you can see that your motor magnets and your rim magnets are aligned. So you want to make sure and take a look at that closely when you do this, just to double check to make sure that you did put the motor in the right way. Because like I said, it is directional on the Sherman, which I just found out myself. I didn't really do any rim changes, so I never came across that before. So I was tipped off by eWheels. Thank you guys. And you also just want to check and make sure that nothing fell in between your magnets, because then once you put everything back together, it's going to scratch. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. So I'm just going to get my other cover plate, and same thing, I'm just going to align it even on my axle. All right, and this is where you could kind of mess up. You don't want to slam on this and damage your motor wires. So just double check, make sure that your motor wires are clear. I even add a second roll of painter's tape. Like that. Just to really give myself a good gap off that axle. All right. Now the wires are basically sitting inside the roll of the painter's tape. They're not really pressing. The axle's not pressing. The metal itself is not pressing on those wires. That's what you want to avoid, because you're going to put some pressure now on this plate. Okay, even pressure. There you go. So this one sat in fairly tight. I'm just going to align it, get my holes aligned. Get a few screws in there. Okay. Like I said, make sure those screws don't get cross-threaded, because you will snap the head right off. They're not that strong of a metal. These are also very weak, and I don't crank down on them either. Just get them taut. And you see how I'm going across opposite sides, even pressure. Now if you listen closely, this is where you're going to start to hear the motor's actually going to pop a little bit. And that's what that is the motor magnets are separating from the rim. So it's giving it that little gap, and it's popping. So you might hear it, you might not hear it over the screwdriver. But if you do hear a popping noise, don't be afraid. That's all that is. It's just separation from the magnets. I'm going to try to do it by hand so you guys can hear that. I think I just heard a little one. Okay, that's one side. Not tight, just in, seated enough. I'm going to flip this around and do the other side. If you're hanging in there still, I appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe and like and all that stuff. I don't really care. I'm not really doing this for the likes or anything, or the subscriptions. I'm just doing it for you guys, for tips and stuff. So, but whatever. If you're on there, this way you guys could, there you go. Hear that crack? So that crack, don't be afraid of that. That is just the motor. I'm glad I wasn't talking while that happened. So if you heard that, that's kind of a good thing. Okay. Might do it one more time. Maybe not. Okay. So that's kind of just hand tight, and then I go around. I'm missing one screw. I have to get that. Probably have it right here. Okay. You could see I didn't put any blue Loctite. There's still blue Loctite on there. To me, I mean, I've never come across one where the bolts were falling out. So I don't really go crazy with the Loctite on these. I think just tension alone holds these in pretty good. I've worked on wheels with thousands of miles and I still had to crank these off. So I wouldn't go too crazy with the Loctite. Around the axle nut, I will put red Loctite, obviously, so the nut doesn't get loose, and then you gotta take the whole wheel apart. Okay, this one's really loose. It is important. I am using metric Allen keys. You know, go get 2 sets of Allen keys, one in metric and one in SAE. Here's my other one. Where's my other set? I have 2 sets here somewhere. Oh, right in front of me. All right. There's very small difference between the sizes, but you definitely want to use the right size, because you'll strip these as you're tightening them or loosening them, and then you're screwed. So it's a couple bucks at Home Depot. Harbor Freight has them, Amazon has them. Just get both sets. This way you're not damaging any screws, because these are made in China, so everything's metric. Okay, go across. And again, I'm just hand tightening these. I'm not wrenching these down. Okay. I'm going to skip ahead and do the other side. Okay, I flipped it over. I did just hear another pop from the motor shifting. Probably not going to happen again. So I did just order myself a new rim also. I'm going to change mine out as well. Don't know how much stronger it is, but I do like that it's wider. Give you a little more bass. So traction, I don't know how the street tire is. I don't ride with a street tire, so I'll be testing this one out though, so I will get a feel for it, see how I like it. And go around a couple times when you do this. Go around twice, 3 times, because every time you tighten up one side, the other side will loosen up, and then potentially you don't want one screw getting loose here, and then your motor could shift. And it's not that time consuming. I mean, I've been doing it for about an hour maybe. And that's taking apart the wheel, removing the tire rim from the wheel, taking the motor cover off, popping the bearing out. So, I mean, it's time consuming, but it's not an all-day job. To some it might be, but take your time. Make sure everything is properly tightened up. And there you go. There's another little pop. That's it. Alright, so basically, let's see. So we clean that up. I think I mentioned that he was missing one of the spacers. This little guy right here is supposed to go in so your pedal hanger clearance is not digging into your cover like that. Okay, it's very, very minimal, but it does make a difference. You can see get all that grease out of there. So this sits in nice. Okay. I just think the more grease that you fit in is just accumulating dirt. It's attracting it more than it's doing good. So I just try to keep the grease inside the bearing, not outside the bearing. And if you guys ride in the winter time and you're thinking that you're cleaning your bearing by spraying stuff inside your wheel, you're really not doing anything. But I guess lubricating the outside of your axle. I haven't seen an axle rust completely and fall apart yet, so I really don't know how that's helping. But hey, if it makes you feel better and you want to squirt some stuff in there, go right ahead. I tend to ride in dry conditions. I don't really ride in the rain. I have a car, so a lot of you guys commute with these and everything, so you don't have a choice. But just take care of your wheel, that's all. Alright, so now that sits in there nice. And there's man, it's such a slight gap that it raises up the pedal hanger, but that little bit of gap is going to clear your pedal from your motor cover and not scratch the hell out of it. So this was probably making noise as he was rolling, and eventually he was just going to wear down his cover. So put your spacers in. Okay, after you get your shim in, there's a little spacer here. It also goes on your axle. Okay, that also gives you a little bit more distance away from your cover plate. And then it's basically your pedal. Okay. And then your shims. Shims go next. Your shims do have a little bit of a direction on them, but what I always tend to do is just follow the curvature of the nut. And that's basically what your nut did to your shims, so they're going to go in like this. So it's kind of a no-brainer at this point. Just align them carefully. I might have to go this way. There you go. They don't fit in one way, flip them, they go the other way. Okay, make sure those are nice and even. This is not red Loctite. This is actually some type of silicone that he used. So I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. Get that out of there. Okay. Alright. Okay, can't find my Loctite. Okay, so shake that up a little bit. Okay, this stuff settles probably a good 24 or 48 hours. Oh, so here's the issue. So it's a brand new one. So you got to cut the head off. I suggest after you use a little bit of this that you stand it up instead of laying it flat down, because it does harden up, and once it hardens up it won't come back out. You'll have to jab something in there like a little pin, but yeah, once you don't need much, just a little dab will do you. So there you go, boom. All right, and then work it around. You definitely don't want to cross thread this guy. That would ruin your day. You could tell if you're cross-threading it right off the bat, so just be careful. Once it seats in there, give it a few turns. It should go nice and smooth. Now, it's possible that it's just not going smooth because the red, he had silicone and red Loctite on before. It's definitely seating. It feels like it's seating fine. Just give it a couple turns. This is why I kind of like doing everything by hand, because you can get a feel for this better than just getting an impact gun on there and cranking it. So, alright, I'm going to get this one started, then I'm going to flip it over, start the other side, and then I'll put it in position to lock it. But right now, it doesn't feel like it's in there really good. Alright, so let me do the other one. Flip it over. Get rid of this. Okay, so you could inspect your wires, make sure there's no cuts to them. Alright, any stress. So the plumber's tape does a good job of not getting your wires scratched up against this metal axle. So let's get the other hanger. Okay. Alright, this is where I gotta stop, because now I'm missing a spacer, and I do not want to put this back just with this one plate on, because I'm not getting my distance. This plate is clean, so this was the side that had the spacer on it, as opposed to the other side you saw was all scratched up. That side was missing the spacer, so it doesn't really matter what side you do. You put this plate on, they're the same. But I don't want to put this back on without a spacer. So I'm going to go try to hunt down a spacer, and we'll pick it up from there when I get back. Alright, I didn't have to go too far. I had one sitting over in this cup over here that's basically was sitting in some degreasing liquid, because this one was completely rusted. Just had surface rust on it, so cleaning it up. Okay. Alright, I mean, I could go crazy and get all this rust off, but it should be fine. It's just surface rust. Okay. Alright, so spacer is going in first. Then I got my washer. Boom, boom, boom. if you're hanging in this long, you have no life. Like me. No, I'm actually just doing this because I'm being courteous, because you guys, I know you guys are very curious to do your own work. So you know, I'm doing this little video for you. That's all. A little Marty video. Alright, so this is really tight. I have trouble sometimes getting this guy off. So you really have to make sure that you kind of like push this in there evenly till it drops on. You might even have to just like give it a couple shots till it falls in there, because this was a little bit of a pain in the neck. So this, believe it or not, gave me more of a hard time than getting these plates off. So, and I don't know why it's always on the wire side. Could be because of the hollow axle. Maybe it's stretched a little bit and it's really tight. But you could see the amount of time it takes to get on. And again, I'm doing it very carefully. I don't want to mess up the threads. What a pain in the neck this is. Yep. It's a real pain in the ass. You want to really hit the hell out of it, but you really got to be careful. So I'm not really doing much to mess up my axle right now. No, she's not moving, and you can't spin it because it's cut out for the axle, so you can't really spin it. You just got to kind of manipulate it in there and hope that it works. Take my beater screwdriver. It's just going really slow. And once you get towards the bottom, it just drops in. So again, be careful. That actually went in a lot easier than it came out. So getting it out is a real pain in the neck. But be very cautious. Don't mess up your threads on your axle. All right. Clean those before I put my nut back on. Try to get as much as that dirt and grime. This way your axle nut goes on a little easier. Alright, so don't make this mistake. You're going to put your hanger this way and then your other hangers that way. Make sure your hangers are going in the right way, or else you'll be doing this twice. Alright, everything gets stuffed back inside the center of your hanger. Hanger on. Get your shims back on. Okay. Get your wires back in your axle. Your hall sensor wire is fairly tight, so you want to maybe just be careful. Just just bend it, hold it, and just stick it in there nice and easy. If you put it in the flat way, you can see how tight it is there. Don't force it in or out. You could pull the wires out of the connector. So be careful with that. One at a time. Okay. I'm just going to do this for you guys so you're aware of it, that if you pull this heat shield back, the wire is exposed. Blue, green, yellow. Okay? There is a method going back in that you have to follow. Follow that polarity. But just know that there's heat shrink up top here. Just pull your heat shield back and you can expose the color of the wire. Makes it a lot easier than figuring it out and guessing. What I do like to do, sometimes I take my Sharpie and before I take it off, I write, put a little F there, front, middle, and an R for rear. So I know front, middle, rear. Simple as that. Obviously the front is where the headlight is, the middle is the middle, and the back is the rear is where the tail light is. So I know this might seem like really basic stuff, but I'm really doing this for the amateur. You know, if you're doing this on a regular basis, there's no need to even watch this video. I'm really doing this for the guy that wants to attempt it himself. Just be aware that things might change in the future. If you start screwing up too much, I don't think these things are going to be warranted. So be careful. You're taking a lot. If you're still under warranty and your motor goes, just call up E-Wheels and have them send it to either them or me or whoever is qualified to do it. Don't take the chance. Do it yourself, because you're only going to get one shot, I think. I think at this point we're running into a lot of issues where guys are shorting out boards, they're cutting into motor wires, a lot of issues. So I don't know how much more lenient, I'll say, E-Wheels will be in sending you parts if you keep on messing up. So be aware. Alright, that went on pretty good. That went on better than the other side. So I'm just going to tighten this up. I do have a notch out that I handmade this one. It fits pretty much over your motor wires. Again, I like doing this by hand. And I just do half turns here. Boom. That's it. I'll start over. I don't want to wrap these wires completely around themselves, so I go nice and easy. Okay, I'll just get this snug for now. Then I'll lay it down on my workbench, my pallet bench over there. Okay, so this one's on snug. This one is on a little bit looser. Again, you're going to watch those wires. Okay, at this point, now you have all your weight on your hanger, so your wires are in pretty good shape. Just still be careful. Don't pinch them. Let's see if I can get this going a little bit better. Alright, this side's fighting me a little bit. I'm going to wait till I get it down on the ground. So I'm going to show you what I use to tighten up these and put a lot of pressure on these. Make sure they are nice and tight. Alright, so this is pretty much where my pallet comes in handy. Alright, so I take the motor, and this is where I slip the wires into the pallet so they don't get damaged. They're not sitting on the floor when I do this. I pretty much just put them in here, and there's a good space in between my pallet where it kind of locks. Yeah, let's see if I can show you. Alright, so see how it's loose there? Alright, so as I go to tighten this, it's going to slide. There you go. So it locks in between my gap and my pallet. And then I put about 150 pounds of pressure on that. And pretty much that's it. So that's one side. And to the other side. The other side obviously doesn't have wires, so you could just slam it down there. Now this is where you want to be careful. I'm going to start here. Okay, get that locked in. Okay, that's locked in. And like I said, I go about halfway. Then I start over. Just check my wires. You just want to make sure that your hangers are even, not offset. Then this way your pedals will be offset as well. Alright, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much how you just replace a rim on a Sherman. I'll get that slapped together and then we'll take it for a test ride. Alright guys, thanks a lot. Sorry it was a long and tedious and boring, but I just wanted to really go over everything that you need to know and give you as much detail as possible. I even used heat on the bearing to pop that out. I showed you how to do that. So, you know, if you're somewhat handy, you can give it a shot. If you're just curious and you want to give it a shot, you know, take your time. I would say watch as much YouTube tutorials as possible. And, you know, get the tools that you need, the proper tools. Don't try to do this with any kind of, you know, odd screwdrivers that don't fit or Allen keys. Get everything that you're supposed to get and make sure you do it proper, or else you're just going to start stripping screws, stripping out your threads. You could damage your motor. All kinds of stuff can happen. It's not that easy. It's very meticulous. You have to be careful, but it's definitely doable. So you could save yourself a couple $100 by doing it yourself, or you could waste a lot of time and money and effort because you could mess it up. So if you don't feel 100% confident that you think you could do it, hand it off to somebody that's knowledgeable, that's familiar with tools, that's familiar with the way things are supposed to be threaded on and sealed, because you want to make sure you only have one wheel. You're relying on this wheel to hold you up when you're doing 35 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour. You don't want to mess this up. So again, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Mono Rides EUC on Instagram. And hope to see you guys on the road. Thanks again. Take care.